the red dust of Kepler 44 to be swirled around Jake Morrison's boots as he walked through the destroyed city. His rifle hung loose in his hands, but his eyes never stopped moving. The war had been over for 3 days, but the planet still felt dangerous. Broken buildings reached toward the purple sky like broken teeth. Smoke rose from fires that burned in the distance. Jake was supposed to be checking for survivors, but he knew he would not find any. The Dominion Empire had been very careful about that. They never left witnesses behind when they attacked a world. The human mining colony on this planet had been lucky to escape before the real fighting started, but something made Jake keep walking deeper into the ruins. Maybe it was the way the wind sounded when it blew through the broken walls. Maybe it was the feeling that someone was watching him. He had learned to trust these feelings during his years as a Marine. A soft sound made him freeze. It was barely a whisper, but it was definitely not the wind. Jake crouched behind a piece of broken concrete and listened. There it was again. Someone was breathing nearby, trying very hard to be quiet. Jake moved forward slowly. His training told him to call for backup, but something stopped him. It was too fast, too shallow. Someone was hurt and scared. He found them in what used to be a basement. A hole in the floor led down into darkness. Jake pulled out his light and pointed it down. 3 pairs of eyes looked back at him, glowing in the dark like a cat's eyes. But these were not human eyes. The aliens were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shine in his light. 2 of them were young, maybe teenagers. They crouched in front of an older female who was clearly hurt. Blood covered her left side, and her breathing was rough and painful. Jake had seen aliens before, but never like these. They looked strong, even injured.
No.
Their hands ended in claws, and he could see sharp teeth when one of them opened her mouth to hiss at him. But what struck him most was their eyes. They were intelligent eyes, full of pain and fear, but also pride. The injured one spoke. Her voice was deep and musical, even though she was clearly in pain. Jake did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was telling the younger ones to stay back, to protect themselves. Jake had 2 choices. He could follow orders and report the aliens to his commanding officer. The military would want to question them, maybe use them for information about Dominion tactics, or he could do something else entirely. He made his choice in less than a second. Jake put his rifle down where they could see it and held up his empty hands. Then he pointed at the injured alien and made a gesture toward his medical kit. The older female watched him carefully. She said something to the younger ones, who looked confused but did not move. Slowly, Jake climbed down into the basement. He kept his movements gentle and obvious. When he reached the bottom, he could see how badly hurt the older alien was. The wound in her side was deep and bleeding freely. She would die if she did not get help soon. The alien female studied Jake's face as he approached. Her eyes were a deep purple color, and they seemed to look right through him. She spoke again, and this time Jake thought he heard a question in her voice.
I
want to help, Jake said softly. He pointed at his medical kit again, then at her wound. One of the younger aliens, the smallest one, suddenly stood up. She was fierce-looking, with scars on her arms and an angry expression. She moved between Jake and the injured female, her claws extended. She spoke rapidly in their language, clearly, telling Jake to stay away. But the older female put a hand on the young one's arm and said something that made her step back. Then she looked at Jake and nodded once. Jake worked quickly with his medical supplies. The alien's blood was darker than human blood, almost black, but it seemed to respond to his wound sealant. As he worked, he became aware that all 3 aliens were watching his every move with intense focus. "My name is Jake," he said as he worked. "Jake Morrison." He pointed at himself as he spoke. The injured alien tilted her head slightly. Then she put a hand on her chest and said, "Veltara." Her voice was getting stronger already. Jake nodded and smiled, and he looked at the other 2 aliens. The fierce young one pointed at herself and said, "Nova." The other one, who had been silent until now, said, "Kira," and Luna, while pointing at herself, and then at a third figure Jake had not noticed before. Luna was the middle sister, She had been so still that Jake had missed her completely. She had positioned herself in the shadows where she could watch both the entrance and Jake at the same time. Smart, Jake thought. These were not ordinary civilians. As Jake finished treating Valterra's wound, the sound of engines filled the air. Above them, all four of them froze. Jake recognized the sound immediately. Dominion patrol ships. Valterra tried to stand, but she was still too weak. The three younger aliens moved to help her, but Jake could see they would never make it out in time. The ships were getting closer, and soon the Dominion soldiers would be searching every building. Jake made another quick decision. He pulled out a small device from his belt and activated it. A blue field of energy spread out from the device, covering all four of them. It was an experimental human shield generator, something the engineers had been working on for months. "Stay quiet," Jake whispered. "This will hide us from their scanners." The Dominion soldiers came down into the basement less than 5 minutes later. There were 6 of them, armed with heavy weapons and scanning equipment. Jake held his breath. As they swept their lights around the room, aliens pressed close to him under the shield. One of the soldiers stopped right next to them. He was so close that Jake could have reached out and touched him. The soldier's scanner beeped and chirped, but the readings were confused by the shield. After several long minutes, the soldiers gave up and moved on to search other buildings. When the sounds of the patrol ships finally faded away, Jake deactivated the shield. Valterra was staring at him with an expression he could not read. She spoke to her daughters in their own language. Jake heard his name several times in her words. Nova, the fierce young one, stepped closer to Jake. She studied his face for a long moment, then did something unexpected. She knelt down in front of him and placed her clawed hand over her heart. It was clearly some kind of formal gesture. Kira and Luna exchanged glances, then knelt beside their sister. Valterra tried to kneel as well, but Jake quickly helped her sit instead. "You do not need to do that," Jake said, though he was not sure. They understood him. But Valterra looked at him with those deep purple eyes and said, in careful English, "You saved us. You risked your life for strangers. This is not a small gift." Jake was surprised that she could speak his language. Anyone would have done the same thing. Valterra shook her head slowly. "No, Jake Morrison, not anyone. Most would have followed their orders. Most would have chosen safety over mercy. You chose differently." As they prepared to leave the ruined basement, Jake had no idea that his simple act of kindness would change the future of 2 entire species. He was just a marine engineer who had made a choice to help someone in need. But to Valterra and her daughters, it was something much more significant. He was the human who had shown them that there was another way to be strong. Jake led the alien family through the back roads toward the human outpost. The journey took 6 hours, and they had to hide 3 times when Dominion patrol ships flew overhead. Valterra walked slowly but steadily, her daughters staying close to her sides. Jake noticed how they moved together like a unit, always watching for danger. The human outpost was built into the side of a mountain. It had thick walls and powerful shields, but it was small. Only 50 humans lived there, mostly miners and a few soldiers. Jake knew that bringing aliens inside would cause problems, but he could not think of anywhere else that would be safe. Guards at the gate were surprised to see Jake returning with aliens. Corporal Ben Martinez raised his rifle halfway before Jake held up his hand. "They need medical help," Jake said. "The woman is badly injured." Martinez looked nervous. "No, I have to report this to Captain Rogers." "I know," Jake said. "Get them to the medical bay first." Dr. Lisa Wong was the outpost's only doctor. She had been treating miners for 2 years, but she had never worked on aliens before. She looked at Valterra's wound and shook her head. "I don't know anything about their biology," she said. "I could make things worse," but Kira, the oldest daughter, stepped forward. She spoke in careful English. "I have medical training. I can guide you." Dr. Wong looked surprised. "You speak our language?" "We learn quickly," Kira said. "My people study many languages. It helps us survive." Working together, Dr. Wong and Kira were able to properly treat Valterra's wound. Jake watched as Kira explained how Zephyrian blood carried different chemicals than human blood. She showed Dr. Wang which medicines would help and which might be dangerous. Luna, the middle daughter, said nothing during the treatment. She stood by the door, watching everyone who came and went. Jake realized she was memorizing faces, exits, and weapon locations. She was gathering intelligence without seeming to do anything at all. Nova, the youngest, was the most interesting to watch. She studied every piece of human technology in the room. When Dr. Wong used a scanner to check Veltara's healing, Nova asked dozens of questions about how it worked. Her English was not as good as her sister's, but her curiosity was obvious. Captain Rogers arrived while they were finishing the medical treatment. He was a serious man who followed rules carefully. Jake knew he would not be happy about the situation. Morrison, the captain, said. What exactly is going on here? Jake explained. What had happened in the ruins? He told the captain about the Dominion patrol and his decision to help the aliens escape. Captain Rogers listened, without interrupting, but his expression grew more concerned with each detail. You used experimental equipment without authorization? The captain said. You brought unknown aliens into a secure facility. You violated at least 6 regulations. Yes, sir, Jake said. I understand that. Veltara spoke up from her bed. Captain Rogers, your soldiers saved our lives. In my culture, this creates a debt that must be repaid. The captain looked at her with surprise. You understand our conversation? Understand much, Veltara said. My daughters and I have been studying human languages and customs for many years. We find your species very interesting. Why? Captain Rogers asked. Veltara smiled, showing those sharp teeth. Because you do unexpected things. Most species in the galaxy follow predictable patterns. Humans do not. This makes you dangerous. To your enemies, and valuable to your friends. Over the next few days, Jake spent time with the Zephyrian family, while Captain Rogers decided what to do with them. He learned that they were not ordinary refugees. Veltara had been a high-ranking military officer on their homeworld. Her daughters were trained warriors, each with different specialties. Kira was a weapons expert and tactical analyst. She could look at any battle situation and quickly understand the best strategies. She spent hours talking with Jake about human military tactics, asking questions that showed she understood warfare better than most human soldiers. Luna was a scout and spy. She could move so quietly that even Jake, with all his training, could barely hear her. She had a gift for blending into shadows and reading people's expressions. Jake realized she had been studying him and everyone else in the outpost from the moment they arrived. Nova was a close combat specialist. She was young, maybe equivalent to a human 18-year-old, but she was incredibly strong and fast. She challenged Jake to sparring matches, and he was surprised by how much she could teach him about fighting techniques. Your people fight differently than ours, Nova said after one training session. You use tools and tricks, we use strength and speed. Both ways work, but together they might work better. Jake found himself enjoying these conversations. The 3 sisters were intelligent, curious, and surprisingly funny. They had a dry sense of humor that reminded him of his fellow Marines. But they were also clearly from a very different culture. Tell me about your home world, Jake said one evening, as they sat in the outpost's common room. Veltara's expression grew sad. Zephyr was a proud world. We were warriors, but we were also builders. We created beautiful cities and strong ships. We thought we were prepared for any enemy. What happened? Jake asked. The Dominion came with 1,000 ships, Kira said. We had 50 good ships and 1 million brave soldiers. But they had technology we could not match, and they did not fight with honor. They poisoned our water supplies, Luna added quietly. They attacked civilian targets, used weapons that killed slowly and painfully. Nova's hands clenched into fists. We fought them for 6 months. But they were too strong, and we were not ready for their kind of war. Jake felt angry hearing about the Dominion's tactics. He had seen the results of their attacks on other worlds. They were not interested in fair fights or honorable victories, wanted to break their enemies completely. Is that why you were studying human languages? Jake asked. Veltara nodded. We heard stories about humans. How you fought the Dominion differently. How you won battles you should have lost. We wanted to understand your methods. And what did you learn? Jake asked. That you do not think like other species, Kira said. When you face a problem, you look for solutions that no one else would. Consider, you turn weaknesses into strengths. Jake was about to respond when alarms started ringing throughout the outpost. Captain Rogers' voice came over the speakers. All personnel to battle stations, Dominion fleet approaching. This is not a drill. Jake jumped up and ran toward the control room. The Zephyrian family followed him. Through the outpost's windows, they could see lights in the sky. Dozens of Dominion ships were descending toward the planet. How did they find us? Someone asked. Captain Rogers was studying the sensor readings. They're not just looking for us. They're searching for something specific. He looked at Veltara. I think they're looking for you. Veltara nodded grimly. The Dominion does not like to leave enemies alive. If they learned we survived, they would send ships to finish what they started. The outpost's 50 humans were preparing to fight against a Dominion fleet. Jake knew they had good defenses, but not good enough for this kind of attack. They needed something more than weapons and shields. They needed a miracle. As Jake watched the enemy ships getting closer, he realized that maybe they had one. The Zephyrian family was not just refugees seeking shelter. They were experienced warriors who understood Dominion tactics better than any human, and they had something to prove. Battle for the outpost was about to begin, and it would test everything that both species had learned about each other. The Dominion ships filled the sky like dark clouds. Jake counted at least 30 vessels, each one bigger than the entire human outpost. But something strange happened as they got closer. Instead of attacking immediately, they began to circle the mountain. They're scanning for something, Captain Rogers said, but our shields are holding. Kira studied the enemy formation through the outpost's viewing equipment. They are being careful. This is not normal Dominion behavior. Usually they attack first and ask questions later. What makes this different? Jake asked. Veltara spoke from behind them. Despite her injuries, she had insisted on coming to the command center. They want us alive. The Dominion has learned that dead enemies cannot provide information. Luna pointed at the largest ship. That is a command vessel. See the markings on its hull? The commander aboard that ship has special orders. Nova growled softly. They think we are helpless. They think humans are weak. Jake looked at the approaching fleet and felt a familiar calm settle over him. It was the same feeling he got before every difficult mission. The odds were impossible, but that just meant he had to think differently. Captain Jake said, I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Captain Rogers looked at him with tired eyes. At this point, Morrison, I'm willing to listen to anything. We surrender, Jake said. Everyone in the command center stared at him. Nova hissed angrily. Humans do not surrender. That is what we learned about your species. We don't surrender, Jake agreed. We just make them think we do, Jake explained. His plan quickly. The Dominion wanted prisoners, especially the Zephyrian family. They would send a small boarding party to collect them, thinking the humans were too scared to fight. But Jake had studied Dominion tactics during the war. They always made the same mistakes when they thought they had already won. It's insane, Captain Rogers said. If it goes wrong, we all die. If we do nothing, we all die anyway. Jake pointed. Out. This way, at least we have a chance. Veltara stepped forward. There is something else we must discuss. Something important. Jake looked at her. There was something different in her voice, something formal and serious. In my culture, Veltara continued, when someone saves your life and the lives of your children, a debt is created. This debt can only be repaid in one way. What way? Jake asked, though he was starting to worry about the answer. Veltara looked at her 3 daughters, then back at Jake. I offer you my daughters, not as slaves, but as companions. They will serve your bloodline, protect your family, and if they choose, bear your children. The command center fell silent. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the chest with a hammer. What? It is the highest honor in Zephyrian culture, Kira explained. Mother is saying that you are worthy of continuing our bloodline. Your children with us would be strong and intelligent. I cannot accept this, Jake said quickly. I don't own people. Nobody owns people. Luna tilted her head, studying Jake's expression. You misunderstand. We would not be owned. We would choose to stay with you. There is a difference. Nova stepped closer to Jake. You saved us when you could have walked away. You risked your life for strangers. Showed us that. Humans have something most species lack. What's that? The ability to see enemies as potential friends, Veltara said. Most species destroy what they do not understand. Humans try to understand what they do not destroy. Jake looked at the three sisters. Kira watched him with intelligent eyes. Clearly analyzing his reaction, Luna remained perfectly still, but he could see she was listening to every word. Nova looked fierce and proud, but also hopeful. I need to think about this, Jake said. There is no time, Veltara said. The Dominion ships are preparing to board us. You must decide now. Captain Rogers cleared his throat. Morrison, we have bigger problems right now. Jake knew the captain was right, but he also understood that this moment was more important than it seemed. These three alien women were offering to change their entire lives because of one act of kindness. The responsibility felt overwhelming. Can we discuss this after we survive the next few hours? Jake asked. Veltara smiled. If we survive, the debt remains. If we die, it does not matter. The Dominion ships began their approach. Jake pushed his personal concerns aside and focused on the immediate problem. The plan was simple, but it required perfect timing and a lot of luck. The outpost's shields powered down. Captain Rogers sent a surrender message to the Dominion fleet. Within minutes, a boarding ship separated from the main fleet and headed for the outpost's landing bay. Jake positioned himself and the Zephyrian family in the main corridor, exactly where the Dominion soldiers would expect to find them. The rest of the humans hid in prepared positions throughout the outpost. Remember, Jake whispered, act defeated until I give the signal. The Dominion soldiers entered the outpost with confident steps. There were 12 of them, all heavily armed and wearing battle armor. Their leader was a tall, gray-skinned alien with multiple eyes and a voice like grinding metal. Humans, the leader said, you will come with us. You will be questioned and then executed. What about them? One of the soldiers asked, pointing at the Zephyrian family. The Zephyrians come with us alive. They have information we need. Jake stepped forward. We surrender. But I want to know what you plan to do with the civilians. The Dominion leader laughed. Civilians. These are Zephyrian warriors. They've killed many of our soldiers. They will pay for their crimes. They're refugees, Jake said. They deserve protection under galactic law. Galactic law is what we say it is, the leader replied. Now move. Jake caught Kira's eye and nodded slightly. She understood immediately, and spoke to her sisters in their own language. To the Dominion soldiers, it sounded like she was telling them to cooperate. Actually, she was telling them to get ready to fight. The Dominion soldiers made their first mistake when they got too close to their prisoners. They made their second mistake when they assumed humans were too scared to fight back. They made their third mistake when they underestimated how much 3 Zephyrian warriors could accomplish in a small space. Jake gave the signal by diving toward the nearest soldier. At the same moment, Kira pulled a hidden energy weapon from her clothing and fired at the Dominion leader. Luna seemed to disappear entirely, reappearing behind 2 soldiers with her claws extended. Nova roared and charged into the middle of the group, her fists moving too fast to follow. The battle lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, all 12 Dominion soldiers were dead or unconscious. The Zephyrian sisters stood in the corridor breathing hard but uninjured. Jake was amazed by how efficiently they had fought together. That was incredible, Jake said. That was just the beginning, Veltara warned. When their boarding party does not return, they will send more soldiers, and they will be more careful. Captain Rogers appeared from his hiding place. The main fleet is moving closer. I think they're getting suspicious. 8 looked at the Zephyrian family. In the last few minutes, he had seen them fight with skill and courage that impressed him deeply. They were not just refugees seeking protection. They were warriors who had chosen to trust him with their lives. "I have an answer to your offer," Jake said to Veltora. She waited for him to continue. "I accept," Jake said. "But not as master and servants, as partners. If your daughters choose to stay with me, they stay as equals. We work together, fight together, and make decisions together." Veltara smiled. "This is even better than what I hoped for." Nova stepped forward and placed her hand over her heart. "I choose to stay." Kira nodded. "I choose to stay." Luna said nothing, but she moved to stand beside her sisters. As the Dominion fleet prepared for a full assault, Jake realized that everything had changed. He was no longer just a human marine trying to survive. He was part of something new, something that might be strong enough to challenge the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The weeks following the failed Dominion boarding attempt were strange and wonderful for Jake. The enemy fleet had retreated after losing their soldiers, but everyone knew they would return with more ships and better plans. During this quiet time, Jake began working closely with the three Zephyrian sisters. The arrangement was unlike anything either species had ever tried before. Instead of the traditional master and servant relationship that Veltara had originally proposed, Jake and the sisters became partners in every sense. They shared knowledge, trained together, and planned for the future as equals. Kira was fascinated by human engineering. She spent hours in the outpost's workshop, taking apart mining equipment and weapons to understand how they worked. Jake showed her the basics of human technology, and she showed him Zephyrian energy manipulation techniques. "Your people build things differently than we do," Kira said one day as they worked on improving the outpost's shields. "We focus on making things powerful. You focus on making things adaptable." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Kira held up a Zephyrian energy cell. "This power source is 3 times stronger than your human batteries, but it only works in one type of device. Your batteries are weaker, but they can power many different machines." Together, they began creating hybrid devices that combined the best of both technologies. Their first success was a new type of shield generator that was both powerful and flexible. It could protect against different kinds of attacks and adjust its strength automatically. Luna worked with Jake on reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. She taught him Zephyrian stealth techniques that were completely different from human methods. Where humans use technology to hide, Zephyrians use natural ability and mental discipline. "Your people try to become invisible to machines," Luna explained as they practiced moving silently through the outpost. "My people try to become invisible to minds. Both methods work, but together they work better." Nune showed Jake how to control his breathing and heartbeat to avoid detection by biological sensors. In return, Jake taught her how to use human camouflage, technology, and electronic jamming devices. The combination made her nearly impossible to detect. By any known scanning method, Nova's training sessions with Jake were the most intense. She was a natural fighter, but her Zephyrian combat style was based on overwhelming strength and speed. Jake's human training emphasized tactics, flexibility, and using an opponent's strength against them. "You fight like you are afraid, Nova," said after their first sparring match. Zephyrian warriors charge forward and crush their enemies. "Sometimes charging forward gets you killed," Jake replied. "Sometimes it's better to let your enemy charge at you." Nova was skeptical until Jake demonstrated by letting her attack him with full force. At the last second, he stepped aside and used her momentum to throw her across the training room. She landed hard, but unhurt, and when she got up, she was grinning. "Teach me more of these tricks," she said. Over time, Nova learned to combine her natural fighting ability with human tactical thinking. She became even more dangerous than before, but also more controlled. She could end fights quickly without killing her opponents, something that had been difficult for her before. The partnership was working better than anyone had expected, but it was also attracting attention from other species. Ships began arriving in the system, not to attack, but to observe. Representatives from a dozen different alien governments wanted to see this. It's an unusual human-Zephyrian alliance for themselves. Captain Rogers was not happy about the visitors. "Supposed to be a mining outpost, not a diplomatic center," he complained. But Jake understood why everyone was interested. What he and the sisters were creating was something new in the galaxy. Most species either fought each other or ignored each other. The idea of true partnership between different races was almost unheard of. The visitors brought news from across the galaxy. The Dominion Empire was growing stronger, conquering more worlds every month. But they were also facing new kinds of resistance. Other species were beginning to copy human tactics, using creativity and adaptation instead of just brute force. "Your influence is spreading," said Ambassador Chen, representative from the Earth's government who had come to investigate the situation. "The Dominion is having trouble dealing with enemies who don't fight predictably." Jake was working with Kira on a new weapon system when the ambassador found them in the workshop. The device they were building looked like a normal human rifle, but it fired concentrated Zephyrian energy instead of bullets. "Impressive," Ambassador Chen said, examining their work. "How much more effective is it than standard weapons?"
"About
40% more powerful," Kira answered. "But that is not the most important improvement." "What is?" the ambassador asked. Jake activated the weapon's special feature. The energy beams split into 3 separate beams, each one tracking a different target. "It's not just more powerful, it's smarter." Ambassador Chen looked thoughtful. "The Earth Council is very interested in this alliance you've formed. They want to know if it can be expanded." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "They want to know if other humans can form similar partnerships with other alien species. They think it might be the key to defeating the Dominion." Jake looked at Kira, who was listening carefully to every word. "What do you think?" he asked her. "I think it could work," she said. "But only if both species truly want to be partners. It cannot be forced." That evening, Jake sat with all 3 sisters and Veltara in the outpost's common room. The older, Zephyrian, had recovered completely from her injuries and was now helping to coordinate the growing alliance. "The Earth government wants to make this official," Jake told them. "They want to create a formal treaty between humans and Zephyrians." "What would that mean for us?" Nova asked. "It would mean more responsibility," Jake said honestly. "We would become examples for others to follow. Every success and every failure would be watched by the entire galaxy." Luna spoke quietly. "Would also make us bigger targets for the Dominion. We will not want this alliance to succeed." Veltara nodded. "My daughter is right. The Dominion rules through fear and division. An alliance like ours threatens their entire system of control." Jake understood the risks, but he also saw the opportunity. If we can make this work, really work, it could change everything. Dominion conquers worlds because they face each species separately. But if species started working together, the Dominion would face enemies they cannot predict or understand, Kira finished. The decision was made that night. They would accept the Earth Council's proposal and become the foundation of a new kind of alliance. But first, they had to prove that their partnership could survive a real test. The test came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected a massive Dominion fleet approaching the system. This time, there were over 200 ships, including several of the Empire's most powerful battleships. "They're not just coming for us anymore," Captain Rogers said grimly. "They're coming to make an example of this entire system." Jake looked at his 3 partners. The past few weeks, they had become more than allies. They'd become family. Kira, with her brilliant mind and gentle wisdom. Luna, with her quiet strength and perfect instincts. Nova, with her fierce loyalty and unbreakable spirit. "Are you ready for this?" he asked them. Nova grinned, showing her sharp teeth. "We have been ready our whole lives. The question is," Kira added, "are they ready for us?" As the Dominion fleet drew closer, Jake felt the same calm certainty he had experienced in the ruins. Where he first met the Zephyrian family, they were about to face impossible odds again, but this time they were not just surviving. They were fighting for something bigger than themselves. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. The Dominion fleet arrived like a storm. 200 ships filled the space around the planet, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. Admiral Vex, the Dominion's most feared commander, led the attack personally. He'd never lost a battle, and he did not plan to start now. Jake stood in the command center, watching the enemy ships take position. Captain Rogers and his 50 human soldiers looked grim but determined. Veltara sat nearby, still weak but refusing to hide. The three sisters stood ready for battle, their hybrid weapons gleaming in the dim light. "They're not attacking yet," Luna observed. "They're studying our defenses." "Admiral Vex is careful," Veltara said. "Learns about his enemies before he destroys them. But his caution can also be a weakness." Jake activated the outpost's communication system. "Admiral Vex, this is Lieutenant Jake Morrison. I know you can hear me." The response came quickly. A holographic image appeared in the command center, showing a tall alien with 4 arms and skin like black metal. His voice sounded like crushing stones. "Human," Admiral Vex said. "You have something that belongs to us. Surrender the Zephyrian criminals, and we will kill you quickly." "They're not criminals," Jake replied. "They're refugees under human protection." "Admiral." Vex laughed, a horrible sound. "Humans protecting aliens? This is why your species will never rule the galaxy. You are too weak to understand that strength comes from dominance, not friendship." "Maybe," Jake said. "But we're strong enough to make you work for your victory." The Admiral's expression turned angry. "You have 1 hour to surrender. After that, we will destroy everything on this planet." The hologram disappeared. Jake turned. To his companions, "Everyone knows the plan?" Kira nodded. "I will coordinate the technical systems. Our hybrid shields and weapons are ready." Luna checked her equipment. "I will handle reconnaissance and sabotage. Your ships have weak points I can exploit." Nova cracked her knuckles. "I will lead the ground defense when they send boarding parties." Jake looked around the command center one last time. In a few minutes, everything would change. Either they would find a way to defeat impossible odds, or they would die fighting together. The attack began exactly 1 hour later. Dominion ships opened fire with weapons that could destroy entire cities. But when their energy beams hit the outpost's shields, something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking through, the beams were absorbed and redirected back at the attacking ships. "What?" Admiral Vex's voice crackled over the communication system. "How are they doing that?" Kira smiled as she operated the hybrid shield controls. "Zephyrian energy absorption combined with human adaptive technology. Your own weapons are now charging our defenses." The Dominion fleet changed tactics, using kinetic weapons instead of energy beams. Massive metal projectiles slammed into the mountain around the outpost. But Jake had prepared for this too. The outpost's mining equipment had been converted into defensive systems that created barriers and deflection fields. "This is impossible," Admiral Vex snarled. "A few dozen humans cannot defeat my entire fleet." "They are not just humans anymore," Veltara said, speaking into the communication system. "They are something new, something you cannot understand." While the space battle continued, Luna put her part of the plan into action. Using a combination of human stealth technology and Zephyrian infiltration techniques, she left the outpost, unseen, and made her way to the Dominion landing ships. The enemy had expected her to hide or fight defensively. They had not expected her to attack their ships directly. Luna moved through the Dominion fleet like a ghost, placing explosive charges and computer viruses that would activate at the right moment. Admiral Vex grew frustrated as his weapons failed to break the outpost's defenses. He decided to end the battle with overwhelming force. "Deploy the planet killer," he ordered. A massive ship moved forward from the back of the fleet. It was 3 times larger than any other vessel, and its single weapon could crack a planet's crust. The planet killer began charging its main gun, drawing power from every other ship in the fleet. "Now," Jake said quietly, Luna activated the charges she had placed throughout the Dominion fleet. Explosions rippled across dozens of ships as their power systems overloaded. At the same moment, Kira redirected all the outpost's defensive energy into a single, focused beam aimed at the planet killer. The Dominion superweapon exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from orbit. The destruction was so massive that it damaged many nearby ships and sent debris flying in all directions. Admiral Vex stared in shock as a quarter of his fleet was destroyed or disabled in seconds. "This is not possible," my intelligence reports. "Said humans were technologically inferior?" "Your intelligence was wrong," Jake replied. "We're not inferior. were different, and different can be very dangerous. But the battle was not over. Admiral Vex still had over 100 ships, and he was now angry enough to destroy the entire planet if necessary. He ordered all remaining vessels to focus their fire on the outpost's location. The concentrated attack was too much for even the hybrid shields to handle. Cracks appeared in the mountain around the outpost, and some of the defensive systems began to fail. Jake realized they needed to change the nature of the fight. "Nova," he said, "are you ready for the final phase?" Nova grinned fiercely. "I have been ready since we started." The outpost's main doors opened, and Nova led a charge that no one expected. Instead of hiding behind their defenses, the humans and their Zephyrian allies attacked directly. Nova and a team of volunteers used personal shield generators to protect themselves as they flew toward the Dominion ships and small, fast vehicles. The Dominion had never faced an enemy crazy enough to attack a space fleet with ground troops. Nova and her team landed on the Admiral's command ship and began fighting their way toward the bridge. Her combination of Zephyrian strength and human tactics made her nearly unstoppable in close combat, while Nova created chaos on the command ship. Jake and Kira launched the final part of their plan. They had spent weeks building a special weapon that combined human creativity with Zephyrian power. It was not designed to destroy the Dominion fleet. It was designed to turn them against each other. The weapon sent out a signal that interfered with Dominion communication systems. Suddenly, enemy ships could not tell friend from enemy. In the confusion, they began firing on each other. The organized fleet became a chaotic battle where no one knew who to trust. Admiral Vex tried to regain control, but Nova had reached his bridge. The young Zephyrian warrior faced the most feared commander in the galaxy in single combat. The fight was brutal and fast, but Nova had learned well from her training with Jake. She used the Admiral's size and strength against him, wearing him down until she could deliver the final blow. With their Admiral dead and their fleet in chaos, the remaining Dominion ships retreated. They had lost half their vessels and accomplished nothing. The news of their defeat spread quickly across the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, representatives from dozens of species came to visit the outpost. They wanted to learn about the Human-Sephorian Alliance and how it had defeated the mighty Dominion Empire. Some came as potential allies. Others came as curious observers. A few came as new enemies who saw the Alliance as a threat to their own power. Jake found himself at the center of something much bigger than he had ever imagined. What had started as a simple act of kindness had grown into a movement that was changing the entire galaxy. "Do you regret your choice?" Veltara asked him one evening as they watched construction begin on a new, larger facility that would house the growing Alliance. Jake looked at Kira, who was designing new hybrid technologies with human and alien engineers. He watched Luna training scouts from 6 different species in advanced reconnaissance techniques. He saw Nova teaching combat skills to volunteers who wanted to defend their worlds against the Dominion. "No," Jake said. "I don't regret anything." Duh. 3 sisters had become more than partners or allies. Had become family, and together they were building something that had never existed before in the galaxy. A place where different species could work together as equals, sharing their strengths and covering each other's weaknesses. The Dominion Empire still controlled most of the galaxy, but for the first time in centuries they faced an enemy that grew stronger with every challenge. And at the heart of that resistance was a small outpost, where a human marine had once made a choice to help strangers in need. That choice had changed everything.